We've talked about Tbilisi, Georgia for years, and people have often associated our brand with it. But this year, I will spend less time there than any year in recent history, and the reason is... Let's break down the country of Georgia versus the city of Tbilisi. I want to talk to you about my thoughts on both for 2023 and tell you why I plan on spending less time there, because it's not exactly what you may think. So, Georgia as a country has good taxes. If you have a business, if you're a freelancer, you can do a relatively straightforward structuring of your affairs to where you're paying 0 or 1% or somewhere in that neighborhood in taxes. And so that is not a bad deal. The country is open to many. If you have almost any kind of Tier A or Tier B passport, you can visit for 360 days just on a simple tourist visa. You don't even need a digital nomad visa. You can get a residence permit, and they're back to actually issuing those in the last year or so if you want to buy property or start a business. But you can just come and hang out and check it out for a while, and so it's open, and that is something that's better than a lot of places. Residence permits are available for investors and entrepreneurs. Banking is still available, and it's straightforward. It's a little bit more frustrating to set up the account, but it's not bad once you have it. Things like paying household bills are efficient, so if you're treating it as a part-time home, that's still good because they have good processes in place, some of the best in the world. And there is a relatively open-minded culture to people from around the world judging, owing to Georgia's historical status as a place where people from different cultures came, whether it's from Russia, from Turkey, from Azerbaijan, from Armenia, from other places in the region. So that's the country. Still a lot of benefits. Why is the city, to me, a place that I'll spend less time in the future? I'm going to tell you, and if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We helped put Tbilisi on the map for a lot of folks in the Western world, and we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. Everything from lowering your taxes, whether it's in Georgia or somewhere else, getting second residence and citizenship, diversifying your portfolio, and making sure that you have options, which is important right now. And so I have a lot of good things to say about the country and what they've done. I have a lot of good things to say about the fact that, for example, taxes cannot be increased unless everyone gets together and votes. And so they've done some pretty innovative things. Some of that innovation, in my mind, has stagnated, and some of that affects just the country as a whole. Some of that affects Tbilisi as a city. And so I went to Tbilisi for the first time. It's almost been a decade ago. I was intrigued by the fact that as I traveled around the world, I saw ads on even CNN International that were put on by the then president, Mikhail Saakashvili, who spoke at our conference, Nomad Capitalist Live, in 2021, basically saying, we're open for business, come here. And I thought that was pretty innovative to not only, say, let's slash taxes, let's slash corruption, let's do a lot of things, but let's advertise that and bring people in. And I saw it as a very efficient crossroads between East and West. It felt different. There was a certain almost exoticism there that I still kind of feel, right? I mean, a place in the Balkans, for example, may feel very European, but there's a certain kind of, not quite Asiatic feeling, but this interesting feeling that you'll find in a place like Georgia, and just still feels a little bit exotic, even though I've spent a lot of time there and at times called it home. But when I first went there, it was very clean, it was very tech-focused. You're seeing more and more countries do things like pay boxes and setting up online payments and just making things very digital. But they were one of the first countries that really, in an emerging country, did that very well, and things worked. And so, if I'm looking back at that, you still have a lot of those things. Other countries are keeping up. I don't know that it's advanced as much in recent years, but it's still, again, the easiest home that I have to maintain. Making friends was always easy there. But what I'm seeing now is, not only is the city changing, but I'm seeing some of the cracks in the system. So for example, service in Georgia was never their hallmark. And I was recently in a very nice restaurant where I generally avoid taking elevators. I took the stairs. And every time I go there to this restaurant, every time our team has plenty of functions there, it's always like, hey, what are you doing? I'm going to the terrace, right? I don't want to take the elevator. I'm taking the stairs. The last time I was there, they sent like 4 security guards after me, and I have to admit, I got pretty upset with them. And it speaks to this culture that is kind of worsening as I feel that people think things are improving, that the service just isn't great. So what I've said at some point is, having a home there, I'd like to stay at home, eat the delicious food, and just kind of stay in my home environment, go out for a walk occasionally, and I just really wouldn't want to go and deal with as many restaurants, because as much as I have a short list of restaurants I go to in every place, my short list in Tbilisi has gotten shorter because I just feel like the service isn't as good. It seems to have gotten a little bit worse. The other issue that comes up is, I do wonder when I see people in Tbilisi and they say, hey, I'm glad that you told me about this place. I first went there when the place was really very clean. And in many ways, the infrastructure there is not that bad. If you drive around Georgia, you'll drive on, in many cases, very well-paved roads. They've done a very good job. But what you'll see now that you didn't see when I first went there, and I don't want people to think that my standard is what it is now, you'll see a lot of graffiti. During the pandemic, you will see more graffiti. You will see more trash. You will see some elements of just kind of government silliness. So they went out and bought a bunch of these really expensive trash cans where you have 4 different spots. You have like the paper, you have the glass, you have just the regular trash, you have the kind of separated trash. They immediately got tagged and graffitied and kind of screwed up and have kind of become a laughing stock. And so people in the country will point to the fact that, oh, it's this new mayor who just got reelected. He's a football player. He's a good-looking guy. He's got a good-looking wife. The typical kind of like Gavin Newsom story in California, the typical Justin Trudeau, the typical, people vote for the good-looking guy straight out of central casting. And for me, I like to somewhat float above politics. I don't know that's entirely the solution. But I think that the politics has somewhat contributed to the attitude of, hey, like, we just aren't going to keep things as tight anymore. Even, for example, the airport Wi-Fi doesn't really work as well as it used to. When you saw, previous administrations, they're like, we're just going to make everything work, get it to work, execution is everything. It was almost kind of run as a business. Am I saying that politicians are responsible for all of this? I'm not. They're not the ones out graffitiing the city. And so, to me, it's difficult to enjoy it as much as I used to when there are fewer places to go. There are still plenty of places to go. There are more and more resorts all around the country, by the way. There's some beautiful resorts. And if you want to go to the mountains, if you want to go to wine tasting, if you want to go to hot springs, if you want to go to all kinds of different places, there are opening some really good resorts across the country. So the country itself is developing. The country itself is improving. Flight connections are improving. But the city itself to live in, I ask myself, and part of this is just my transition to saying, you know what, I've been very successful in life, and I would like to be in an environment that's a little bit closer to where I started. I've spent many, many years in emerging countries. It's helped me make better investment decisions. It's helped me save a lot of money. It's helped me do a lot of things. And maybe there's a time to move on. And so in all fairness, that's part of it. In part of it, I have a team there that is one of our best teams. We have a great office. I have friends. I have family. If you don't have those things, then I am seeing people who are leaving because you're seeing costs going up. Costs that don't as much impact me because I own property. My property taxes are essentially zero. So my financials aren't that bad there. But if you're renting property there, or if you've got to buy property now, you may find better deals in parts of Central Europe or Eastern Europe in places like the European Union or the Balkans. No doubt property prices are going up everywhere, but they've really gone up there. And so if you took my advice a couple years ago and bought, you're sitting pretty. If you're going there to buy now or rent, you're going to pay a lot more. And so that, when you add that to the city has been graffitied, the city seems to have less of a goal of collecting trash, it's not as appealing for me. Yes, I'd like to go there, some of the best wine in the world, some of the best food in the world. And when you know people, they can be some of the warmest people in the world. When you have close friends, when you have close relationships, they will do anything for you. But if you're just coming in, there is less of a story now than there was. I still believe in having tax-friendly residents. I think you could buy a property there and that could be very useful. I still think the banking is decent. So all the things at the country level, the financial level, the infrastructure is not bad. On a day-to-day life level, partially my progression, partially my saying I want to move a bit away from what we've become so known for, which is emerging markets, because I've done that for so long and I want to kind of step up a little bit. But part of it is saying, they just haven't done as good of a job. And so if you're going for the first time to Tbilisi now, don't think that's what it was before. I'm rooting for the city and I want to see it grow. But I'm also seeing people just kind of sit back and accept that their city is going to be more filled with trash. I bought a larger home recently in a beautiful city center neighborhood. The place where my old home was is still very desirable, but I am seeing just like a few more things fall into disarray. People seem to care a little bit less. And so I'm going to be watching it from afar. I'm going to be visiting it occasionally. But if I had to start all over, I still think there's a lot of benefits to Georgia that you're not going to find in European Union countries. Again, the country has a lot of appeal. But I think on the city level, I have some frustrations that are pushing me to spend more of my time somewhere else. Not only with the cost of renovating my new property because of all the Russians coming in, because the country has a high cost of materials being brought in from other places, but just the fact that it isn't quite what it once was, and I hope it comes back at some point.